Well, here we go. Help a Teacher, Facebook Live, weekly. I love it, man. It's my there's a few things I have during the week, and this is one of those that I absolutely look forward to getting to come here on Facebook Live on Help a Teacher Facebook page and hang out with you guys. And I've been looking forward to this one. We've been setting this one up for a couple of months really. Hey, wait a minute, before I go any further, get this. Oh, I'm so bad at all the stuff I'm supposed to do before we get started, but I want to do it great this time. Check this out. Before we get going today, here's what you need to know is at some point about halfway through our time together in about 15 minutes or so, maybe 20 minutes, we are going to give away $50. We have a $50 Amazon gift card from Help a Teacher right to you. And it's $50 you can use on Amazon.com for whatever you need, you and your kids need for your classroom. So all you have to do to get entered into our random giveaway is to comment. And if you comment here on the show, we'll have those post comments. What they do is they keep running by, and we'll try to involve you in the conversation a little bit. And also, what happens in about 15 or 20 minutes, we will get we'll put all those names into a randomizer, and then we'll give away a $50 Amazon gift card. There you go, Mary. She's in. She's fired up for this thing. And I don't know, Mary, you might win. We'll see what happens. All right, here we go. On today's show, we have something new, something different. This is, I think it's a first for us. We have Coach Danny Ramsey. And Danny is currently serving as well as an assistant athletic director, and he's also offensive coordinator at a high school football program. But here's what's interesting about this guy is I don't think he has a social studies certificate. He might not know of any names and dates and places to speak of. He's never taught PE. This is a real life teacher. I want to say his certification is English and language arts, where he's been in the classroom for years and served as team leader. And so, and what's cool about this guy is there he's in the classroom on the football field, and he's serving in that role of the dad that so many of our kids just don't have in their lives. And so we're going to talk about his life and all he has going on in the classroom, on the football field, as a teacher, as a coach. And man, I'm so I don't know, man. I'm thankful that he's spending time with us. Danny Ramsey, what is happening, brother? How are you?
Fantastic, man. How are you?
I'm great. Hey, so here's what I want to know is, I think in Texas, where you are, where I am as well, a lot of people just associate that typical coaching position with PE and history. And but is it true? I mean, you're a language arts certified teacher. Is that correct?
That's when I was in the classroom full time and all the time. That's what I was in. ESL and then English.
Yeah. And so what was your draw to that? Was that something you felt like you excelled in high school, and that was going to be your ticket to the classroom, or what was it?
That's a no. That's a no. When I went to college, I was I don't think that I was even looking to be a coach, to be honest with you. I was looking to play football, of course, or sing or whatever, because I'm a singer as well. And so I wasn't really sure exactly where this was going to take me. So when I went to McPherson, McPherson's a liberal arts college, and it's really small. Like, I graduated with a class smaller than what was going to school at McPherson College. I graduated Westfield High School, so there was like a class of 500, and then there was like 479 people at McPherson College. But it allows you to get to know people really well. So my advisors were impressive, and it allows you also to kind of customize how you make your degree work. So I started in music education, knew I was never going to be a choir director. I don't play instruments for nothing. My sausage fingers don't work on anything. I barely passed my piano proficiency. Anyway, I changed from music education to just music as the major. And when I was looking for what certification I was going to attach to things, the one that needed the most advocates for kids, in my opinion, was English as a second language. And so since I had so many linguistic and historical or social study credits, it fit quicker, and it fit better. And so when I first was certified, I was certified in ESL only. I wasn't certified in English. About 4 years in or so, I went and took a job where they hired me as an English teacher because I had enough English credits to be highly qualified there, and then took the English test uh, in the spring and passed it and got an English certification and taught English for another 9 years.
Yeah. So when you should, let me ask you this, man. So you went, you had the experience on a football field in college, and that's just a whole different scene. And I'm just curious what it was like when you stepped into the classroom. Not as a coach, but as a classroom teacher. What was it? Was the culture completely different, or what?
I don't know that it was necessarily different because like my heart for teaching in the first place was to be an advocate for kids. That's why I got an ESL certification. It didn't matter. Like I told myself, and my wife and I talked about it when I got it in the first place, was these kids are here, and they don't have an advocate here. Some of them are here because their parents are bringing them here to get their best education and take them back to whatever country they were coming from. My first placement as an ESL teacher, I had 6 different languages in the classroom. I had kids from Brazil, from Russia, from Korea, from Mexico. And so it's not like you're teaching, it's not bilingual. It's not like I'm teaching English by using Spanish. It's not like I was teaching Spanish and then just sprinkling in English or vice versa. It was, you're going to all learn English and only English is acceptable, from kids who didn't know a lick. And so because I was an advocate in the first place, like to be a teacher, when I finally decided this is where we're going to go, this is the path we're going to take, we're going to do this and coach. Coaching was simple. I always had I was blessed with coaches who were caring, and they were good teachers in the first place. They were all in classrooms. One of my most influential coaches said he was a head coach at one point in time before the assignment where I had him as a coach, and he read poetry to his team a couple of times for their pregame speech. So I was blessed to be influenced by people who cared about bettering the lives of kids. That was the whole goal for me to be in education in the first place. So,
And I think that's like the key for great educators is, what I find is it almost doesn't matter what the content is, like what their field is, what they're interested. They're just using the content of their classroom to make a difference in the lives of kids. That might
right.
be in a language arts classroom, that might be in the band hall, that might be on a football field, that might be in the
In the lunchroom, in the
lunchroom, hallway, exactly,
yeah,
in the front office, in the nurse's office. Like that's really what separates not just great educators but great schools, is when everybody realizes wherever they are, that's your classroom, and the whole point of whatever's happening in here is, yeah, man, we want to stuff some knowledge into that kid's noggin for sure, but what we really want to do is change that kid's life.
yeah, no doubt. And I think so. Like, was the culture in my classroom different than what I had experienced? No, I think I tried to create it, if that makes sense. Like, I tried to create what I had experienced, and I still do, regardless of today's time versus when I was going to school. So many times people talk about how times have changed. Times might have, but kids haven't. The expectations of kids, parents, how parents treat kids, how teachers treat kids, that those things change. Kids don't change. They want to know that you care. They want you to hold them to a standard. They don't want to get over, even though they're going to try to, but they've tried to get over since there were kids. Like they tried to get over, Abel and Cain tried to get over. That's what they're trying to do. You know what I'm saying? They all lie. Don't think your kid never tells a lie. My kids are great. Don't get me wrong. My kids are fantastic. They lie. They lie. They do. They're just kids. They're trying to push the bubble, find out how far that they can go until the bubble pops. When it pops, they blow another one and they start to see how far it'll go again. But they're still just kids. And they want to know that you give 2 cents about how they're gonna do and what they're doing in life. And My wife and I share the same view in this. She'll tell you right now, she teaches geometry, but it's never been about the geometry. And she loves geometry, shapes, angles, all that stuff. You start talking about that stuff. She's got a pair of shoes that say geometry on them with triangles and all this stuff. Pi Day is like a national day. It's not about the freaking circle and apple. It's about 3.14 or whatever the numbers are, blah, blah, blah. But she'll tell you right now, it's never been about geometry. It is about life. And that's what we kind of combine when we tackle that.
Yeah, man. You know what? I think the whole, what I love about that whole, like, starting off that whole thing was just reminding us that they're just kids. Like, they're kids and they're supposed to mess up. That's why you have a job. It's because kids mess up, right? And I can't, like, that's probably one of my pet peeves when I'm visiting schools and I'll overhear some teacher and talk about the kids. Oh my gosh, that girl, she is just so lazy. And it just drives me into, look, man, she might be acting lazy in this moment. Yes, but that's a child. You know what she is? She's 12. That's what she is. Right. And just because she's lazy in your room doesn't mean she's lazy when she's online with her friends, or lazy about something she's passionate about or cares about. So what we have to do is figure out how to create that passion for her to care about what we're doing in here. He's so rude. Listen, he might behave rude, but you know what he is? He's 13. That's what he is. And he's in, like, he is still in the incubator. That's where he's in the incubator. And it's our job as adults of influence in this kid's life is to shape that kid and mold that kid and not give up on that kid, and to use the content of our classroom, on the football field, wherever it is, to make a difference.
Yeah. And it's funny because people think that, and they've done it for years, where they'll start to deteriorate what they do with the discipline standpoint or from an accountability standpoint. And the truth of the matter is the kid wants to know where the box is. How far do you want me to go, or how far are you going to let this go before you refocus, redirect, grab my attention with something else and put me back on the path that I'm supposed to be on? What's the path you want me on? So when you define it, if you let me zigzag all over the place instead of following through that path you want me to go, that's on you. Like, they're just a kid. You still have to get them directed that way. It's when I did professional developments, when I was a head football coach, I would do professional developments when the year would start. And one of the things that I would present to the teachers and to the coaches, whoever was in there, was that they're all the same people. I think you and I talked about this once before, but teachers are coaches and coaches are teachers. Teachers are ridiculous motivators because they get kids who are not passionate about geometry to learn geometry. Maybe they even become passionate about it because they learn things like tessellations and whatever, and all of a sudden it's overflowing into their art, or to how your angle of what route you're running gets you open versus get you covered. That's geometrical, totally. So how do I apply what it is that we're trying to learn? And what standard are you going to hold for me as a kid? Like, I'm 12. I do this. I'm like herding cats, no matter what age, all the way to 18 and beyond. You know that. Hal, you're hard to corral too. You're like the biggest kitten of all. So when you're herding cats as a teacher, you are tremendous. Teachers are tremendous motivators. You get kids who are not passionate about your subject area to complete, to achieve, to become passionate about your subject area based on your passion in the first place. And coaches are technicians like ridiculous. So they take a kid who's passionate about their subject area and they have to finite the technical points of how they get what they want in the way of a result by teaching technique. So we're the same people. Like, we're all the same people. The vessel by which we're teaching them life is different.
Yeah. I think one of those suggestions that we all heard when we first started out was, don't smile till Christmas, like that whole thing. And obviously I don't agree with that, but I agree with the sentiment. I think what they were what their kind intention was to create really strong boundaries at the beginning and a lot of structure. And here's what I found, man, is and you can take it, from my most advanced classes I taught to our most challenging personalities when I was teaching in alternative learning programs. It didn't matter. Like the clearer I could set boundaries and the clearer I could set structure in a kind and passionate way, in a loving way. Of course I smiled. We had a lot of fun, but you can do that with that structure as well. I think that's what they meant by that when they said don't smile till Christmas.
I agree. I mean, you can't start from chaos and move the other direction, even though that's what you're inheriting in each of your classrooms. But when you set a standard, whatever that is, whatever you're going to allow is what you teach. That's a twist on a statement you hear often. You either teach it or you allow it. No, no, no. You do both. You you do both. If you're allowing it, you're teaching that to be okay. Or if you teach it, that's what you're going to allow before you redirect, before you use another comment, before you throw um, another activity their direction, before you uh, change what it is you're teaching. Same thing that you're teaching, but teach it a different way so that you can get them back on track, redirected in the place that you want them to go in terms of that path. And the other thing too is, it's funny is, and I think some folks agree with me here, and that's some folks talk about how nowadays you have to teach a certain way. I don't think that's true. I think 20 years ago when I was in school, 25, 30 years ago, whatever it is now, when I was in school, I think the good teachers did that already. And all we've done now is shift how we talk about it or what we've named it or what the label goes on it. The bottom line is those teachers got the attention of all of those kids. And they put them in, that was their goal. It was never to leave a kid behind, but now we have names for it for whatever reason. But it all came back to the same thing. It's about setting boundaries, whatever your expectation, and hold that expectation.
Man, I got to tell you is that's what I always said about educational research. It just seems to me, the whole point of it seems to me is to affirm that what works is what really works, is what we always knew what worked. Like, but now we have research that tells us maybe why it worked, but we already knew what worked. And I think you're right, man. I think is helping teachers. I think one of the goals that I always have is helping them discover like whatever their style is. Some of the challenges that we have with our younger teachers is they come in and they try to emulate. They try to copy, which is fine. Like I get it at first. You're trying to definitely take what's good and from other people in their classroom leadership and their style for sure. But at some point, you have to be so authentic and pure and completely yourself for this thing to work. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have with the first year teachers is they come in and there's that lady across the hall and she's screaming at kids and they're thinking maybe I got to scream at kids, or there's the joker next door and he's always telling jokes and it looks like he's running a 3-ring circus. Maybe I got to do it that way. I don't know. And they get caught up rather than picking and choosing what works and then customizing that to fit their really their personality and who they are. Cause that's it for kids, man. When we can stand before them and just be completely who we are, 100% authentic and genuine, completely walking the walk. Like that's when we have buy-in and that's when we can create that classroom family.
Yeah, kids are the best lie detectors on the planet. Like you don't need a lie detector. Just pull a bunch of 12-year-olds in the freaking room and ask the guy a question. They'll be able to tell you whether he's lying or not in an instant.
Yeah.
You don't need a needle or nothing. Those kids know a freaking scam whenever they see it. So if you come in there for a paycheck, they know. If you didn't come in there to be a part of what they're doing, they know, and they're going to give you more of the crap that you don't want to see if that's what you're there for. But if you're an educator, you don't need to be that person. Like you're there to change kids' lives. Then be that person. Now, like you said, they're going to find some tools. The young ones, they're going to have to find some tools, but most of that has got to do with time management and organization because they don't necessarily know what that's supposed to look like for what the requirements are in each of the positions or the campus that they may be on or whatever. But in terms of who they are when they're dealing with kids in terms of relationship, the only way to be and be effective is real. How you
Yeah.
speak. I'm an English teacher that doesn't use. My grandmother used to say there ain't a word, and I use ain't all the time. I use slang all the time because that's who I am. So that's how I talk until when you could. But there's a magical moment when you're real with kids, especially when we were teaching English and we'd get to Shakespeare and people would be like, "Oh my gosh, how are you teaching Shakespeare?" And truth of the matter is, you can tell them flat out what was going on. Just tell them what was going on in the story. Get rid of the fluff. Like it's a big poem. It's a big poem. Get rid of the fluff and look what was going down. Explain what happened in the story, and they can tell. And then they go back and they read the poetry, and all of a sudden, these kids who have too many of us think have no business reading Shakespeare totally understand what was going down. Like he was trying to talk to her, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna, wow, that's great," and yeah. It's all about being real.
Yeah. Hey, at what point did you when you were in the classroom, and at what point, how many years in was it for you when you thought, you know what, I think I might be able to figure out how to get pretty good at this thing?
Hey, ask that again, Hal. I started missing you. You sound like a Buck Rogers in the 21st century or whatever it was, 24th century.
Yeah, man, I'm wondering. Like, I'm just thinking back on my career, man. I think back, and I know that for me, I struggled so much the first few years, but after a number of years, I thought to myself, you know what? I think I might figure out how to get good at this. And I'm wondering for you, man, how many years into this career was it before you thought, you know what, I might be able to figure out a few things and be pretty effective as a teacher?
I would say, like as a coach, I felt like I knew. As a coach, I felt like I knew more than I knew, but I felt pretty comfortable with getting words across. One of the statements I use a lot of times is I've been to a ton of jobs now. I've been to in 20 years, I've been to 9 different places, including coaching the guys that I was playing with the year before. So I coached the guys. My first coaching job was a college coaching job. I coached all the guys that I played with the year before and had to earn the name coach from those guys. And so I had to do some things that were me, and then one of the early jobs that I had, I learned a lot of what not to do from the guy that I got hired by. And I knew it was what not to do. In the classroom, it was a means to coach at first, but again, I was in ESL because those kids needed an advocate. So I was real, but in terms of learning, like how to coach, how to teach, holy smokes, grab yourself in a classroom with 6 different languages. That'll throw you in a loop because you got to figure out some creativity real quick and who in the heck you're going to be. I tell you what we started doing was, like, the kids were learning numbers. And numbers is fairly easy with kids that are ELL because numbers still get used all over the place. So once they use them and they start doing math and things of that nature, it's not difficult. But for me, I was signaling plays on the sideline after this assignment, and I was assigned in a school district, but then I coached at a private school. And so the two didn't marry. It wasn't like I was coaching for the same district that I was in. So anyway, I would use some of the time when we were learning numbers, I would signal to the kids because we signaled in the numbers that the kids used on the wristband. So I would go, okay, this is 1, 5, 9, whatever it was. And I would give them a signal and tell them that those were them. All right, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, here's 4, here's 5. Go through the numbers. And I'd say, okay, y'all got to tell me what the number sequence is that I put on here. The fastest person that can write it on the board. So I was taking techniques and things that I was needing to do outside of that classroom, but applying them to those kids learning something that we were learning at the time. And so it kind of clicked with me there a little bit, but I would say probably 4 years in, 4 or 5 years in, I was teaching a sophomore English class, and I had written a song for my wife to propose to her before we got married. So that was how I proposed to her, was to sing this song to her that I had only sung to her once before. And it was it's a poem. I mean, every song is a poem. So I typed the lyrics out, gave them to my class, and we were studying poetry as a poetry unit. And so I said, okay, there was a spring show at this school. This choir director knew me from when I was in high school. And so she knew that I sang and asked that I had sung. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And so the kids, I present them this poem. They look at it and we read through it. And then I told them to close their eyes and visualize what was happening. Well, then I sang the song to them in class. And that's when it was like, okay, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Because they took the song and all of a sudden all the eyes open. They're like, what in the world? This guy's singing, holy crap. He's a football coach. This doesn't make any sense. So we got done with all of that, and they were like, Coach, you got to sing for the spring show. And I was like, no, that's not happening. And so they said, so I finally ended up making a deal with them. I said, okay, everybody's got to make an A. If you all make an A on the test, on the poetry unit test, then I'll go audition for the spring show. Knowing I got the red pen, man. Like, I got the red pen. There's no way they're going to do that. And sure enough, them little turds all passed the test with a 92 or better. And so I went and tried out for the show and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, the point was I was using a lot of different tools to get those kids to understand the material that we're looking at. But it was real life tools for real life situations. It didn't have to do with poetry. It had to do with me. That was something I shared that was real intimate. I don't know that I sang that any other time other than the first time I sang it to my wife and the second time I sang it to propose to her. And at that point we had been married for 8 years and I hadn't sung it outside of that. And that's how I ended up loving, finding the church that we went to when we were in spring for 14 years is the guy who was leading the church, played the piano for that song. And he created all the music for it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this song that I had written with lyrics and the tune never had instruments to it at all. And this guy picked it out of the air in like 10 seconds. So anyway, that longer explanation probably than you wanted on that. But either way, real live tools, real live situations to teach these kids a whole nother set of values.
Yeah. Hey man, let's before we wrap it up, let's give away some cash. So here's what we're gonna do is we have a winner for our $50 Amazon gift card with full of $50, but also a million hugs of love from Help a Teacher Facebook Live. It goes to Mary Daniel Montoya. Mary Daniel Montoya, congratulations. $50 for you and your classroom full of kids. Hey man, let me ask you this, is for those teachers coming in right now and for our younger teachers, and even I know we have first year teachers out there and some of them are still online. My kid here in Houston ISD is still online. There's no in-person school going on yet. Man, what would you say as far as building relationships and building connections and helping teachers create that classroom family right now when it's so difficult? We're 6 feet, distancing, we have masks on, it's hard to see expressions. Man, what would you say? Any ideas for them?
When you're, it sounds simplistic and maybe, I don't know, maybe it sounds like it's a cop-out answer given where we're at, but you can only be as real as you are. Like, you are who you are, if that makes sense. In terms of creating connections, it's about being creative to find out what those kids are interested in. So if Zoom is your only connection to the kids that you're dealing with, you're still just as real in telling jokes or using humor or using a story that's outside of what it is you're talking about, or using a real life situation that they're still dealing with. Because it's not like restaurants and places are all completely still closed. Some of them may be in different places. I'm not exactly sure, but you're still going out to eat. You're still going to grocery store. You're still going places where stories are and things are happening in their lives. If nothing else, you carve out a section of your Zoom meeting to where all you're doing is focusing on those kids and what it is they're experiencing, so that you can talk to them, so that you can be real with them. And it doesn't have, like, if I'm teaching English, it doesn't have a daggum thing to do with English. Like, I'm going to designate that time as a non-English time. This is I'm talking to get to know you time, on purpose, with a purpose.
Yeah.
It's a hashtag that I use a lot. I'm doing this on purpose and with a purpose. Not just because it's a curriculum meter, if that makes sense.
It
if
does.
You're not using time to invest in your kids and what they do, like, you're missing the boat on how to create relationships.
I can, now that I have students in their late 40s walking around on the planet, is that's what they talk about, is they'll say, man, I'll never forget the time that, and that is always followed by something lots of times happened outside of class.
Or didn't have anything to do with what you were teaching.
No, of course not, man. But the most recent one, right? But the most recent was I was talking to a kid, and He said, man, you know what I think about? Remember that time that we had that Christmas tree and we never took it down in the classroom? We left it up all year. And then after school, and on the last day of school, you asked me to take it to the dumpster. You remember that? We're dragging it across the parking lot. And like, I sort of have this, kind of
Vague.
recollection. It sounds familiar, but this kid remembered every single detail. And like, that's the
Yeah.
magic of that's the magic of teaching, but that's like the scary part of teaching. Like the stuff that they remember forever. We're just going about, looking back, I was probably just trying to get home. Hey dude, help me with this Christmas tree and take it to the dumpster, man. Let's go. And for that kid, for him, it was this lifetime memory.
They are they're Memorex, man. They're Memorex. Oh, for some of y'all who are
Yeah.
young teachers, y'all don't know what that is. That's like a recording device with a cassette and stuff. Yeah, no, I use that to teach linemen or any of the kids kinesthetically. When we break down a movement we're looking for, we take a step and we take two steps. You take three steps and you go the full movement or whatever it is. Well, whenever they get in their stance, I have them take one of their hands, whichever one's the least important, tell them to touch their nose and press Memorex. I go, okay, never mind. Press record. And they still barely know what the heck that means. And I'm like, look, you're trying to get this to repeat later. And then this is rewind. And then this is play. So, because if you can connect in your head by kinesthetically touching certain things that are those buttons, you can then reenact exactly the movement that you're looking for. And so kids will come by and talk to me about Memorex all the time that don't know what Memorex is. Like they don't know that was a commercial. Is it live or is it Memorex? Like they don't have a clue that has anything to do with anything.
Yeah.
I used to use a technique where I talked about we were in a technique and we called it by using the matrix. And when we used the matrix, we were referring to the movie The Matrix, where they were moving so fast that everything seemed so slow. And so that's what I wanted these kids to do. I wanted to move fast, but I wanted to be able to comprehend things that were going on outside of them. So, hey, when you're in the Matrix, this is what's happening. And I would use that until about 7 years ago, I couldn't use it anymore. They don't know what the heck that movie, it wasn't that good a movie. So it definitely didn't get that, but they couldn't use it anymore. So yeah, it was the things that they remember are nuts.
It
I had
is,
one
man.
kid who now, like, he talked to me about 2 years ago. He called me. He said, Coach, I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done in my life and blah, blah, blah. The stuff that you want to hear, it was good. And he talked to me and he said, the thing that stuck out to me most was when you caught me in a moment where I was being lazy and you told me to get up off my butt. And I'm going, I don't remember saying that ever. Totally could have. Don't remember ever saying that to this particular kid. And that's what stuck to him. And this guy is now running his own multi-million-dollar company. I'm going, dude, you can share the wealth if that was so important. I can tell you to get off your butt every day.
Hey man, I'm looking at these comments and some of them are so good. James Tobin, we know that guy. He's talking about separate the doer from the deed. And man, like these are the conversations we have to have, what I call outside of the emotion, because when the emotion gets high and things get hard and and we're frustrated and then that turns into anger, like that is the hard part, is stopping and taking a moment to think not just what we're talking about this behavior, but the why behind the behavior, and then helping us separate, man. I'm not, this isn't who this kid is. This is just how this kid is behaving, because those are very separate things.
Very different. Like and we have a bad, like, teachers lounges should be places that would be better for this, but teachers lounges are really bad places to be. Like if you're hanging out in a teacher's lounge or a department room or whatever, and all you're doing is talking about kids, especially if you get to the negative part, like, dude, you don't need to be there. Get out of that place. Talk to one teacher, talk to two teachers. When you get in a group, if the conversation goes to the other, to analyzing a kid's behavior, why not analyze what we can do to be better or to change that behavior? And I'm as guilty as the next, but it's one of those things. Like I am I'm a follower of a guy named Brian Kane. Brian Kane's a sports titles, helped Mississippi Ole Miss win a national championship. Out Coastal Carolina, when they won the national championship, this guy helped them. But one of the things that he preaches is 4 rip 3, and the 4R is there's 4 R's that you want to follow in any of your situations in order to get better. And the first of those things is routine. But the second of those things is to recognize what it is you're doing. So you've got this routine, and then the performance happens, whatever that is, teaching a lesson, talking to a kid, disciplining a kid, whatever it is. But you got to recognize there's a little green me on the shoulder and there's a little red me on the shoulder. And if the red me is winning, you got to knock him off. If the red me or the complainer or the emotional person or the whatever it is winning, I got to recognize in that moment when I just performed what it is I just did, which one is winning, which one am I feeding? I know you've heard that story a bunch. That's a familiar one in terms of mindset, is that the kid that asked the grandpa which wolf wins, and the grandpa answers whichever one you feed the most. So that you got positive monster, negative monster in your mind. You got to recognize which one you just performed, and then you got to flush it, no matter which one it was, and then refocus in what you're looking for. So it's routine, recognize, release, which is to flush it, and then refocus. But using strategies like that to realize what it is you're doing and where it is you're trying to take the next steps, because we're human. I think that was where the point that I was trying to get to was, we also have a bunch of garbage that's going on in our life that we're dealing with. And we carry that just like kids do into the classroom, around the classroom, in the hallway, into the teacher's lounge, whatever. But what we have to do is it's like we tell football players, it's like you tell baseball players or any sport players, that when you cross the line of competition, when I cross onto the field, all of that stuff has to go away. And now it's go time for my routine. So that then I can recognize, so that then I can release, so that then I can refocus and put myself in a position where these kids can learn how to learn. So not only that for us, but for them, like teaching them how to learn. For me, it's as easy as setting I say easy. It's as simple as setting it to that process. Because if it's easy to do, it's also easy not to do. So easy is not the term. Simple is a better term.
And I tell you what, brother, when it comes to working with kids and teaching, there is a huge distinction between easy and simple, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole lot of stuff that's simple.
Nothing about this job is easy. That's right. Nothing about this job is easy.
Hey, man, thank you so much for joining us, brother. I really, really appreciate it. Every time we get to hang and talk a little bit, I learn a ton, and I really appreciate your time.
I'm ecstatic to be here anytime. You know that.
Awesome, brother. And hey, real quick, if I'm about 5'3", so if I'm on that 8-year-old flag football team, your kid's playing and you're about to head back to and finish it up, watch your kid. What position would you put me at?
Yeah, you're snapping the ball.
Yeah.
Or you might be the ball.
Have a great night, man. Take care.
You too, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Sure, brother.